Hello everyone, welcome to today's episode. And in this episode, I want to share my psychedelic experiences with ayahuasca and magic mushrooms and describe the steps you can take to use psychedelic experiences to change your beliefs. I will also share a bit about my personal story, but it all has a common goal: transforming the beliefs that were once instilled in us into new ones that serve us better. I honestly didn't find psychedelics by accident. It was very intense time in my life. I was working in Switzerland at a job I didn't like, and I was in a 8 year long distance relationship. My emotional life was quite a mess. And honestly, it was a period I look back on fondly, but I'm embarrassed to talk about it. After a few years of various emotional experiences, one day stands out in my memory. And after years of living in a never ending cycle of a month of work and then a month of travel, I came across a few books about psychedelics, specifically ayahuasca. And they didn't just fall into my hands by chance. One day I visited my neighbor in Switzerland, a 70-year-old lady named Lucia, who often baked delicious cakes. And we lived in a small village called Kleinlutzel, where everyone knew each other. She spent most of her life traveling between Switzerland and Canada, where her husband was from. She had early stage dementia, and whenever I visited her, she always mentioned that when she is in Canada, she miss Switzerland, and when she is in the Switzerland, she miss Canada. She had books about ayahuasca and always told stories about how it changed her life in Peru. I didn't take it seriously at first, but it piqued my curiosity from time to time, and eventually I borrowed those books from her. Although I read only few pages, the topic of psychedelics captivated me. I started searching the internet for places where I could try ayahuasca and found information that it could be done in Mexico. So, since I had always wanted to visit Tulum, I knew this time it was going to be big. So, I flew there, and let me tell you, it's true that ayahuasca calls you, and there is no need to plan it forcefully. And it's amazing, actually. As soon as I landed, I met up with my friends who had been living there for a few years. I mentioned ayahuasca to them. So we had actually never talked about such topics before. They were around 40 years old, much older than me, but always fascinated me with their spirituality combined with a laid back attitude. And they played a significant role in my life, I can say, guiding me in a very down to earth way. They organized the entire ceremony for me in a safe and verified manner, making me feel cared for, which is the most important thing. I spent 4 days in the heart of the Yucatan jungle, planning to take ayahuasca for 3 consecutive nights. We had a shaman, a guide who talked to us about the trip and the experience with ayahuasca. We weren't left alone with our thoughts. Every doubt, every experience, every thought was shared in a small group where we felt safe to open up. And here's the thing: I only drank ayahuasca for one night because it was such a strong, beautiful, and very necessary experience for me that I knew I didn't need more at that time, at that moment. And how did it begin? After a pretty intense start, I began vomiting. I was the first one in the group. I knew it hit me the hardest and the fastest. Me, lying on the mat, I felt like I was alone, completely alone with my thoughts. I couldn't believe what was happening. I noticed that I disconnected from my thoughts and feelings. I could observe them, like a scientist examining samples under a microscope. You know that scene from science fiction movies where the protagonist manipulates various data on a interactive screen in front of them. That's exactly how it felt. I experienced something incredible. Instead of seeing images, I saw my beliefs, memories, and thoughts laid out in front of me like on a platter. And I stopped being a chattering mind and became an observer. I was observing myself probably for the first time in my life. I could look at myself objectively, which wasn't a pleasant sight. Additionally, I could look at the reality around me and the supposedly rigid rules that governed it from a distance. I stepped aside to be alone for a while. I thought about various situations from my life, and both past and future, and watched the stream of thoughts and emotions they triggered. I was fascinated that, regardless of whether I revisited unpleasant or positive experiences, I no longer identified with them. I started arriving at increasingly strange conclusions. Like, am I responsible for how I interpret reality? My emotions and beliefs are not me and do not define me. And the reality I live in is a reflection of myself, and the world doesn't revolve around me and what I think. And for the first time in my life, under the influence of a substances, I didn't feel fear or irritations as the effect began to wear off. So, in fact, I couldn't wait for it to end so I could see if my insights were true when I was sober. So, of course, I had no idea then that something like the integration of psychedelic experience awaited me. So, when I woke up in the morning, I went to my room feeling enlightened and nothing changed. But at the same time, everything changed. So, what changed? Although it seemed like nothing changed in my life, I felt that this experience had an impact on me. I started to pay more attention to what I was saying to myself, how the environment I was in affected me, how my thoughts influenced my feelings, and vice versa. And at the same time, I found less joy in spending another evening talking the same nonsense on the same topics with new people or even with my family or who I love dearly, but who behaved the same way like week after week. The monotony of this supposedly exciting life started to wear me down, and the insights kept coming for 2 months after the trip. So I felt like I understood more, knew more, saw more, yet I was functioning the same or maybe even worse. But in that place where I felt it was getting worse, a breakthrough. Oh my god, my belly. Did you hear it? Okay, let's continue. I tried to be professional, but I can't. My nature is funny. So the breakthrough happened. One day I just started meditating, but I wasn't regular in it. And still feeling that sense of being present in the now, I could quickly get into the proper meditative state. At some point, a reflection hit me. It was like a flashback to my ayahuasca ceremony, which led to many positive changes in my life. So, first, as a social being, I want to be liked and feel attractive to the opposite sex, like everyone. So, I can't fight this. It's a biological mechanism. Denying this feeling that I didn't accept myself pushed me into some weird defense mechanism. Secondly, I noticed that the less attractive someone feels, primarily in their own eyes, the more they need external validation. And I was the same. I'm talking specifically about my first romantic relationship with someone I genuinely loved, but as a young guy, he made me feel bad about how I looked and felt about myself. So it was like he constantly pointed out other women and even complimented them in a sexual context to make me feel bad. He did it in a way that I couldn't call him out because he would just say, "Don't overreact, you are too sensitive," or "It's just a joke." Or you can imagine any other excuses. It wasn't intentional, but he wasn't sexually disciplined. And what do I mean by sexual discipline? Honestly, my next relationship taught me that. And it showed me how I should truly be treated. And okay, but this had a big impact and followed me for years because I was just a young girl and my little brain quickly coded everything. So it was my first relationship and it was actually very young. So it had a significant influence on my self perception and how I saw my body. So I broke up because, besides the love, which over time I would say wasn't mature, I always felt not enough, which is actually the worst feeling, especially in a relationship. And thank God I was later surrounded by people who at least superficially boosted my self esteem. And then, absolutely, the biggest role in this played my next relationship. Now, I will tell you what he taught me and what I consider the hottest trait ever. The hottest trait ever, totally. We women know how hard it is for a guy not to adore all the women around and refrain from complimenting their charms. We know it's hard for you to not to give attention to other women, complimenting on Instagram or I don't know in real life every other woman. And we know, absolutely, we know it's hard. It's your nature. So what my ex taught me is that if you don't do this, it definitely shows your strength. That you can control yourself, which is the hottest trait ever. And this actually is the princess treatment. Nothing else. Feeling safe emotionally, that's it. And it makes perfect sense. If a guy can control his instincts, it automatically translates to a sense of security. And we women, and I absolutely can agree because I talk about it with other women and with all my friends, and also with other men that I think they behave this way. So, yeah, if a guy can control his instincts, it provides security, and we women think that if you can control your instinct, you can manage the family, you can handle any situation, and give to us that sense of security. And a sense of emotionally security leads to deeper intimacy and absolutely better sex. We feel safe if we feel that our man isn't available for everyone. And I got that, for which I am immensely grateful. He told me that it's not okay if your Instagram is full of naked influencers, and I mean naked OnlyFans girls, and is built on the attention of other women. Leave a comment every other woman being at the same time in relationship or I don't know, just dating. And that I shouldn't agree to the such a weird situations I agreed to before, even though I felt jealous. And he showed me that I'm the most important one, and rather that every other girl would be jealous of how he treats me and puts me at the center, while also being able to appreciate the beauty of other women and even their sex appeal without making me feel that I'm less. And that is how I built my confidence. I learned how I should be treated and stopped feeling jealous. I knew that if someone showed interest in another woman in my presence, it said more about them not appreciating their own choice, actually. So over time, I realized my so called confidence didn't come from genuinely liking myself or accepting my body. It was based on what others said about me. So I started going to the gym and accepting things I couldn't change. Like, for example, my breast size. And my first boyfriend when I was 17, and he said he prefers breasts that are surgically enhanced or just different ones from mine, and that gave me a complex, seriously. And I never thought I looked bad until then. But my next relationship turned every insecurity into something beautiful, like true acceptance. And I really learned to appreciate the beauty and diversity of other women without losing my sense of self. And he once said something that stuck with me. Your body is there to protect your internal organs. What more do you want from it? It's healthy, beautiful, serves you well. So you got it in the way it's best for you right now, and your body will change. And that made me see myself and others differently, not just as physical bodies, but as something meant to help us survive. So it should be healthy above all. Okay, now let's get back into psychedelics. After ayahuasca, I wondered how it happened that just one experience changed me so much. And I had been physical wreck for years, avoiding exercise, being lazy, and having bad eating habits from home. So up until then, my peak performance was doing a few push-ups. My previous gym experience ended with a few photos on Instagram, and that's true. A year later, I train 6 times a week and participate in marathons. Ha. Okay, but now I'm going to give you a quote from book by Coleman. Psychological healing with psychedelic drugs involves not only this shadow work but also includes what is called the peak experience. The peak experience is a sampling of how we might feel and perceive life if we had never been programmed or traumatized. It's an experience of peace, relaxation, and connection with spirit. It is a fresh, here and now experience of the joy of existing without the fears, anxiety, neuroses, judgments, and conceptualizations that habitually contaminate our perception of reality. Words cannot adequately describe the places you may visit in non ordinary states of consciousness. They are scared experiences of sanity that can be remembered and used as reference points to cultivate and learn to reproduce without the drugs as we heal and evolve. And you can't really describe it better. During a trip, you momentarily get rid of all the sludge that clogs your perception daily. You feel fantastic. Insecurities, toxic loops, limiting beliefs, and all related negativity disappear. Emotions, both bad and good, flow freely through you, and all the energy you usually burn on maintaining various defense mechanisms is suddenly free. So you see the world, yourself, and your possibilities as they truly are, without the burden. So you stop shrinking and hiding from imaginary threats. You get a clear picture of what you want and how to achieve it. Everything falls into place, and you marvel at how simple it all is. This is like muscle memory, but on a mental level. Besides the classic trauma work, I will show you how to transfer yourself to the state you aspire to, and remember it. This helps you reach your goals much faster, no matter what they are. How does it work? Okay, let's assume we have two people, both wanting to start a business that brings in around $1 million in a year. Both starts from scratch in a place where they don't know anyone. There is only one difference between them. So, one of them has already had such a business before but lost it. Anyway, he already knows what it's like to run such a business, to make that kind of money, and knows that the difficulties and stress that will arise are the part of the game. No matter how bad and hard it gets, he always has a vision of himself after achieving his goal, being absolutely convinced that it's possible and within his reach because he has already experienced it. He moves forward like a storm. The second person has never experienced this before. They are stepping into unknown territory. It's not just about experience, but more importantly, expectations. Reality always tests them. Difficulties pile up, followed by doubts and various forms of self sabotage. The goal starts to seem more distant. Even if they eventually achieve it, it will take much longer than it could have. Inner peace and confidence significantly shorten and ease the completion of any task. Okay, I know this is very exaggerated example, but I want people who have never experienced this to understand what I mean. During a psychedelic experience, if you direct your stream of consciousness correctly, you can feel with every cell in your body what it will be like when you achieve a certain state. And I don't just mean the state of your bank account, but also your well being, posture, and confidence. After returning to normalcy, you can mentally return to that feeling, which will help you avoid stumbling blocks like self sabotage. The state you can then experience will become a kind of lighthouse. The better you remember it, the easier it will be to navigate towards it. So, how did it affect me? I started to understand on an emotional level that my body deserves better treatment because it serves me. And of course, these flashes of awareness can happen in everyday life too. For example, you might realize you should quit smoking because a doctor found something on your, I don't know, lung scan. Whatever. But I didn't want to wait and leave these things to chance. I preferred to act now and take matters into my own hands. Consciously create my beliefs and remove the toxic ones. After literally 3 years, I took magic mushrooms for the first time and prepared for it because I knew that responsibly used psychedelics are designed for self work. And now I will tell you about a routine that will allow you to consciously direct your thoughts during the trip to the areas of life where you want to make a change. The first one is very important: intention, the absolute foundation. Without it, my mind resembles a raft in the middle of the ocean during a storm. Okay, a few days before the trip, I place a piece of paper next to my laptop or in a visible spot where I write down things I want to focus on. And this point, it's still in the form of free writing, weight, self confidence, additional income, interesting hobby, overwhelm. In your case, especially at the beginning, this might not work. If the number of things currently bothering you is very large, you don't know where to start, or you just want to organize it a bit, I recommend choosing a few prioritize. Set aside an hour of free time, turn on stimulating music, and be alone with yourself to know what's best for you. You probably start to get a clearer idea of what you could focus on during the trip. But that's not the end. Write down everything that, in your opinion, will help you level up in that particular area. And please write slowly and write down everything that, in your opinion, will help you rise to a higher level to achieve it. Second, the better shape you are in during the trip, the more valuable ideas you will receive. 3. What you will need. The first one is music. And the truth is that everyone has to find their own, but difference in this case is that the music is mainly background. In my case, it's one looped track. I prefer one I know and that easily allows me to being focused. So find a track that will stimulate your brain. You can also try brain.fm. For example, while working with the Wheel of Life, brain.fm aims to stimulate our brain's work with appropriate sounds. Does it work? Yes, I worked with their music for a long time and really felt the difference. The next step is peak. Let's get to work. For the next several hours, your mind will be running at much higher speeds. It would be a sin not to take advantage of it. Being in an altered state enables a shift from a survival-oriented, intellect-dominated state into a more relaxed, expansive state. In this receptive state, a journey experiences heightened awareness of subtle messages of instinct, intuition, and wisdom from the higher self. Even if I feel like just thinking about how fascinating the moment of branches in the wind is at the moment, I put on my headphones, turn on the prepared music, look at the paper with questions and answers, and I repeat them in my head and starting writing. Write and think, then write again. I let feelings and ideas flow through me. How would I feel if I made this change in my life? What would my life look like if I succeed? What is the worst thing that will happen if I don't do it? What will I feel then? I start to see everything I ask about clearly before my eyes. But most importantly, I start to feel exactly as if I were already there. I let this feeling spread throughout my body, savoring the details. The longer I can stay in this state, the more likely it is that the right gears in my mind will click and a new belief will be planted in my mind. And first, obstacles. Next point. Sometimes, or rather very often, I find myself at the beginning in a mental labyrinth full of dead ends. This will happen to you too. For example, what do I need to do to feel more confident? It's exercise. At this point, two problems arise. First, it is too general an answer. Second, we often unconsciously mistake the cause for the effect. To get to the root, you need to dig deeper and observe your reactions. What is the biggest obstacle preventing me from going to the gym regularly? And yeah, of course, you can always say, I don't have time. Yeah, right. I don't have money. Yeah, right. I don't know how to start. Yeah, right. I'm ashamed that I will look ridiculous among others and what my friends will think of me if I fail. At this point, you feel a knot in your stomach, your heart rate speeds up, you feel yourself blushing, and yeah, you have hit the spot right now. It is important not to run away from this feeling. It's not pleasant, but no one promised it would be easy. Use the fact that being under the influence of psychedelics will make it easier for you to deal with this belief. Stay with it as long as possible. Observe how your body reacts to the feeling of shame. Where is the greatest tension located? And get used to it. Observe how, when you don't run away from it, it simply passes on its own. Now it's time to take a step forward. What is the worst that could happen? Imagine the most embarrassing situation you could experience. And instead of running away from it, revel in it. Let this feeling stay with you until you get used to it. If your worst case scenario is that you go to the gym and everyone is watching you, pointing fingers and I don't know, taking pictures right after you get crushed by a barbell, just another day, then imagine that. Accept it. Accept what you feel. This was just an example. Depending on the part of the wheel you are working on, the situation will be different, but the pattern of your behavior should be identical. Afterward, you need to go back to the beginning and ask the question differently. We are looking for more specific answers. What specific sport? How often? What obstacles will appear on your path? And how will you overcome them? Write everything you come up with on paper. And once again, Coleman perfectly describes what I want to convey to you. During a psychedelic experience, your subconscious should provide you with ideas that you probably wouldn't come up with during everyday hustle and bustle. Okay, he said, we may see clearly how our lives have been controlled by government propaganda, religious dogma, and social ethics. As we awaken from this trance, we begin to see the arbitrariness of social mores that have imprisoned us. And this may open up an unlimited range of creative lifestyle options and new possibilities we may have never considered or dared to implement. The power of visualization. This is important. Next step. Now start imagine how you feel when you achieve your goal. How will you see yourself? How will you move freely when you become that person? With what sense of satisfaction will you eat your post-workout dinner and go to sleep? What will be the reaction of people to your transformation? Write down the images you see and the feelings you feel. Let them flow through you as well. Remember this as clearly as you can because this is what you will strive for. And feel as if it has already happened. So at this point, despite some discomfort, if you have done everything right, you should also feel relief. This means that the hardest part, at least for now, is behind you. Okay, ready to hit the gym? Right through the door? Not necessarily. First, you need to sober up. Secondly, I'm not a fan of jumping into the deep end. I really like the methodology presented by Mirek Brunejko in his 3 levels. It's a Polish book. It involves breaking down a big goal into several levels. 3. Where your ultimate goal is at level 3, the last one. How would this look in this example? Your ultimate goal, for example, going to the gym 3 times a week is at level 3. Now is level 1, which is what you can start implementing as early as tomorrow, that will bring you closer to your main goal. When considering different options, choose one that, while challenging, will be easy to implement immediately. Ask questions and write down the answers. Write as long as you need. Use the fact that currently almost nothing limits your mind, and write down as many details as possible. Especially specify methods for dealing with potential obstacles. Okay, let's dive now. Let's dive deeper into dealing with trauma. And warning here, under no circumstances should you work on your trauma without proper supervision, and preferably seek the help of a specialist. Now let's move on to more serious issues. The real fun begins when, before your trip, you write down the area you would like to work on. You start to feel increased tension and stress just by consciously focusing on a problem that you buried deep in your subconscious a long time ago. You know that you need to open this Pandora's box, but you are scared because you don't know how you will react when the waves of feelings you have repressed for so many years come flooding in. I'm referring here to the broadly understood traumas that Coleman wrote about. While working on them, asking questions, and receiving answers, you will very likely begin to feel very unpleasant emotions. Fear, anxiety, tension, stress, shame, loneliness, anger, and despair are just a small sample of the range of emotions that your own mind might serve you. You have two options. Either you run away from them, breaking the loop and essentially waking up tomorrow in the same place you were, or you endure them, accepting that this may trigger a bad trip, and allow these emotions to flow through you. Psychedelics are powerful tools that can unlock your natural ability to self-heal. At this moment, the best thing you can do is let them work and get out of your own way. If what you are feeling becomes unbearable, try to focus on slow and deep breathing. Let your chest and abdomen do the work. This is the moment when a trip-sitter's intervention may be required. Okay, let's say you want to repair your relationship with your parents because you haven't been in contact with them for years due to some hurt. You have managed to repress this problem so effectively that you functioned seemingly normally, only feeling discomfort from time to time when thinking about them. If you allow yourself to work through this during a trip by asking questions like, how can I repair my relationship with them? What would I like to say to them? What do I resent for them? Or what would need to happen for me to forgive them? A whole host of very uncomfortable feelings will flood you. You will probably see very vivid images before your eyes that you never wanted to see again. During your session, the full impact of old emotional wounds may be felt and realized in cathartic explosions of grief, rage, or terror. You might feel the physical pain of rape, injuries, abuse, surgery, etc., as if it were happening now. Yeah, and absolutely as if it happening now. As the pain, fear, and anger are felt and realized Old wounds heal. The supportive therapeutic settings allows you to safely feel emotions you have run from for many, many years. At this stage, under no circumstances should you be alone. It is possible that you will lose control, which is why the presence of a trip sitter is crucial. It's absolutely crucial at this point. It would be foolish to assume that you will be able to handle it when everything you have been running from most of your life comes pouring out. And if you know in the back of your mind that there is someone who has control, you will be able to focus on slowly realizing the trauma. No steps backward. Once it's all over and you emotionally understand what you need to do, there will be no turning back. To regain peace, you will have to take the action you deem appropriate at that moment. And the defense mechanisms you previously developed have just shattered. The time for sweeping problems under the rug is over. And while previously these mechanisms allowed you to function normally, now until you resolve this issue, the quality of your life will visibly deteriorate. Constant irritability, distraction, inexplicable bouts of anger. After some time of inactivity, you will probably manage to repress everything again, but you will have to spend a lot of time and energy just to return to the starting point. If you back out now, you have just wasted your time. Integration of the psychedelic experience. I have bad news right now. About, I guess, more than 70% of people will drop out here. There is still a widespread belief that the emotional charge during a trip or training or seminar is enough to break down walls. I guarantee you that in the morning, when you are still a bit and tired, the last thing you will want to do is implement changes in your life. It will seem like you still need to think it over or wait until you feel that burst of energy and motivation again, like during the trip. Warning, it won't come, and if it does, it will quickly disappear. Unfortunately, this is where the magic ends and the work begins. The clock is ticking, and the later you draft specific action and start implementing them, the less chance you have of making real changes. What to do? On the first day, gather your notes and organize them in one place. List the goals you set for yourself, write down your thoughts, and try to reconstruct what you were aiming for. And this is not always easy. And now, an important piece of information. Don't take psychedelics again until you have significantly pushed things forward. Treat the desire for another psychedelic session as another form of self sabotage. And another trip will only confuse you further. If you feel that after the trip you finally have a chance to change something but don't know how to approach it, look for a trip sitter to collaborate with. There are plenty of them, even on Instagram, honestly. Or write to me and I will send you a recommended person. Okay, my dear listeners, I hope I have shed some light on how I see psychedelics and how this method of self work can serve you. If you have any questions, feel free to message me on Instagram. And that's all for today. I hope everything was clear. I tried to speak correctly. But so, thank you for listening today. And I hope to till the next week. Bye.